Audience, please be seated. In the first agenda of opening ceremony, we will have welcoming remark stations from our committee, Dean Faculty, and also the Vice Rector of Jenderal Soedirman University. First thing first, we have welcoming remarks from the Project Officer of International Conference, Political Social Humanities 2022, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, kindly be invited to the podium, Dr. Slamet Rosyadi, to give a report speech to the audience. The floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. On behalf of the organizing committee, it gives an immense pleasure to welcome all participants and presenters to the second international conference on political science and humanities sciences, or IGPSH, that will be held on 2 days, 12 until 13 October 2022 in Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, with the main theme of social and political recovery for strengthening national building in the post-pandemic. It is my pleasure to welcome all the eminent and honorable speakers, Professor Fedi Hadis from University of Melbourne, Australia, Professor Hadijah Khalid from University of Malaya, Malaysia, Professor Tuomo Rautakivi from Royal University of Phnom Penh, Cambodia, Associate Professor Dr. Pan Yue from Jinan University, China, and Associate Professor Dr. Dwianto Indiahono from Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, Indonesia. It is an honor for us that you can join our conference and able to share your knowledge and vast experience with the scholars and students in Indonesia, especially in Universitas Jenderal Soedirman. This event is the first hybrid conference in the history of our faculty, which is conducted on a physical and digital platform and organized by the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman. I believe that this conference will provide an excellent opportunity to discuss and to learn about recent issues and research related to the main theme of the conference. As chairperson of the organizing committee, I would like to end this welcome with a round of thanks for everyone who has made IGPSA 2022 possible. I would like to start by thanking my fellow members of the organizing committee, fellow colleagues at FISIP Unsud, and administrative staffs who made what initially seemed like the daunting task of organizing a major international conference appear simple. I would especially like to extend our gratitude to our university and faculty management, the rector of Unsud, the dean of FISIP, and all head of department of this faculty for supporting this conference. Lastly, I would like to thank all presenters and participants who are willing to join and share their thoughts and research experience. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Slamet Roshadi, for the opening remarks. Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for the next opening remarks, kindly be invited Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Science. Please welcome Dr. Wahyu Ningrat.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. On behalf of the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Jenderal Soedirman University, I would like to say welcome or selamat datang to all the honorable speakers, committee members, presenters, and participants at the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you all to the second International Conference on Political Science and Humanities Sciences, or ICPSH 2022. The Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, or FISIP Unsud, was founded on May 17, 1984. Currently, the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences has 5 departments for undergraduate programs, namely Sociology, Public Administration, Communication Studies, Political Science, and International Relations. The Faculty of Social and Political Sciences also has 4 master programs. They are Master in Public Administration, Master in Sociology, Master in Communication Science, and Master in Political Science. Following the university's vision, which is recognized by the world as a center for developing rural resource and local wisdom, the curriculum currently implemented and developed is directed toward achieving the vision. To achieve this vision, the Faculty of Social and Political Science also continues to improve adequate infrastructure and facilities following the national higher education standard, and is preparing to become a world-class campus through cooperation with foreign partners. Since its established in 1984, the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences has produced graduates with excellent character and contribute professionally in many government and private institutions, both on a national and international level in the social and political fields. We continue to be committed to creating graduate with analytical, innovative abilities, offering out-of-the-box solutions, thinking critically, and having emotional intelligence. With these abilities, graduates of the Faculty of Social and Political Science are expected to be able to answer the challenge to this globalization and develop its curriculum based on local wisdom. To improve the quality and academic atmosphere in social and political science faculty, we are holding an international conference this year with the theme Social and Political Recovery in Strengthening Nation in Building in the Post-Pandemic. This year's conference is a continuation of the success of FISIP Unsud in holding ICPSAs in 2020. This year, the international conference was held in a hybrid setting. On behalf of the Social and Political Sciences faculty, I would like to thank all speakers, committee members, presenters, and participants who have participated in the Second International Conference on Political, Social, and Humanities Sciences 2022. We hope the similar academic activities will be held again in the coming year with various topics in the field of social and political sciences. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Wahyuningrat, for the welcoming speech. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, for now, the last opening remarks in this opening ceremony, we are honored to invite Director of Jenderal Soedirman University, or the person on behalf would be Vice Rector of Planning, Cooperations, and Public Relations, to kindly address his opening remarks and also to officially open this conference. Please give our warm welcome to Dr. Sosial Waluyo Handoko, SIP, MSc. The floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, Bu Wahyuningrat. Keynote speaker, Professor Fedi Hafiz from Melbourne University, Australia. All invited speaker, Professor Hatijah Khalid Bisti from University of Malaya, Malaysia. Selamat datang Ibu. Profesor Dr. Taumo Ratu Kaviki from Royal University of Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Associate Professor Pan Yue from Jian University, China. Associate Professor Dr. Dwianto Indiahono from Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, Indonesia. Partisipan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Best wishes to all of us. On behalf of the Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, I would like to welcome all of the keynote speaker, invited speaker, and all participants to the Second International Conference on Political, Social, and Humanities Sciences, organized by the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman. Now we are facing a post-pandemic era indicating the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. The world community will begin to recognize that the global pandemic has disrupted the way why human life work and communicate. The COVID pandemic also bring enormous change in the education system, health services, commerce, government system, and every aspect of life. Following the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, social and political recovery needs hard effort to strengthen national building in the post-pandemic. This post-pandemic requires adaptive regulation, adaptive culture, adaptive mindset, and adaptive marketing that adjusts to the new normal. Consequently, the post-pandemic era needs continuous learning. Then the question is how we recover social and political life, which has been destructive, to replace the entire old learning system with new ways in the post-pandemic era. The academic community's talk is to provide solution for organizing life and its harmony with other human to achieve society welfare. Therefore, this conference will bridge the scientific rule and become an interdisciplinary dialectical study of social, political, and humanities. We hope that ideas, plans, and action will emerge into this forum to overcome problems in this disruptive era. Therefore, we appreciate to Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, for this beneficial program. I expect this conference to produce useful output. Last but not least, I congratulate to all the delegates on participating in this online international conference. With the name of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, the second International Conference on Political, Social, and Humanities Sciences 2022 is officially open. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for Dr. Soswolio Handoko for the opening remarks and welcoming remarks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, after the opening ceremony, we will proceed to the documentation session. We would like to invite.
Please invite to the stage Dean of Faculty of Social and Politics, faculty representative, and also organizing committee to stand into the stage for doing the photo sessions.
We also invite the speakers, Mrs. Khadijah and also Mr. Indiohono, to come forward to the stage. And also maybe for the persons in the Zoom meeting, you can turn on your camera and the photo will be captured virtually. Yes, come
Yes.
correct, 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 come correct, come
Yes.
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 correct.
Officially opened, we will proceed to the main sessions with the material explanations by our special keynote speaker. Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in this opening ceremony, we are very honored to have the presence of Professor Dr. Fedi R. Hadis, PhD, from University of Melbourne, Australia, virtually. And the keynote speech for today's conference will be led by Khairu R. Sobandi, PhD.
But before all of that, let us introduce our great moderator today, Mr. Khairu Sobandi, or known as Mr. Sobandi, who has pursued his last educations in the University of Canterbury, Christchurch, New Zealand, majoring in political sciences.
And he was also undergraduate coordinator at the Departments of Political and Social Universitas Jenderal Soedirman. He was also a researcher at Southeast Asia Research Initiative, Christchurch, at the Universitas of Canterbury, New Zealand.
He was also active in writing. One of the last his published work are the article journal with the title Returns Migrant and Democratizations in the Village Head Elections in Indonesia.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, kindly be invited Mr. Hadis and to Mr. Khairu R. Sobandi. The floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, the participants of this international conference. Today, I will be the moderator for these keynote speaker sessions, and for these keynote speaker sessions, the speaker would be is the Professor Fedi Hadis. And he will talk about the political Before we go on, let me talk a little about he's the director of the Institute of journals and articles and books, and I think he's one of the without further ado, I would like to give the time to Professor Hadis to deliver his keynote speech for today. Please, Professor Hadis, the time is yours. Is yours. Is yours. Is yours. Checking the voice. 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 Checking the vo
Mhm. 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 Mhm
Once again, I would like to check the voice. Is it? Can you hear my voice, Professor Haris? Oh, okay, that's
Oh, okay, that's good.
finally. That's unpredictable things to happen. Sorry, Professor. Okay. Yeah, I would like to introduce you first, Professor Humanities. Now we are in the keynote speaker sessions with Professor Fedi Hadis. We are very pleased to have you here in our forum in the International Conference in Visip Unsud, Jenderal Soedirman. Yeah, Professor Hadis today will talk about the political climate and the new policies and their influence on political recovery through strength post-pandemic development. Um, yeah, I would like to introduce Professor Hadis as he is a professor in the professor of Asian Studies at the University of Melbourne. He is also the director of Asia Institute, University of Melbourne, and he wrote a lot of international articles for journals, books, and book chapters, and then um, also interestingly, he also still since 2021 served as the senior Asian Scholars Journal, and this is something I would say like for Indonesia it would be like one of the prominent journal in Indonesia. So I think we would like to hear your speech, your keynote speech for today in our conference. So without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Hadis to deliver his keynote speaker for today with us. Okay, and so the time is yours, Professor Hadis.
Hello. I'd just like to ask whether
Can we start for Professor Hadis? In a few minutes, okay. Okay. Sorry, we still fixing the. Professor, we still the try to catch your voice because it's a kind of like technical problem from the officers here. So it's the voice is very it's a very low voice. So I think we are waiting for the voice from Professor Hadis. Yeah, I know it's kind of like confusing. Just a minute, Professor Hadis. They are trying to fix the problem. Yeah.
If you try to talk to him. Sebentar, tak minta ya.
Check, 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 check. Cek cek.
Okay. Shall I start now then? Hello? Hello, shall I start now? Hello, can everybody hear me? Okay, can everybody hear me? Can you just signal that you can hear me?
We hear you,
Okay.
Prof.
Okay, great. Okay, as I was saying, thank you very much for inviting me to this important conference and to ask me to be the keynote speaker. I've taken the liberty to tweak the topic that was given to me. I don't know whether the committee, organizing committee, is providing you with the slides that I provided them, but basically I am talking about what I call a topic that I'm calling State, Society, and Academia Responses to the COVID-19 Pandemic. So State, Society, and Academia Responses to the COVID-19 Pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has, of course, provided a great shock to the whole global system, from which it has yet to recover fully. We've had other shocks to the system in the past, and they've had wide-ranging effects. For example, the Asian economic crisis of 97, 98, the world, but mostly European and American economic crises of 2008, 2009. But this one is in many ways different for obvious reasons. And I think this one is also important because it actually divulges many things about our global system that we might not have been fully aware or fully conscious about because it seemed to be just tugging along, right? Or chugging along. So amongst the things that it showed, in my opinion, is that the global system is actually quite fragile. So we're used to particular things sort of happening because of the interconnectedness of the world economy, the financial system, the growth of world trade, and so forth. But we see that with COVID-19, how fragile all of this was. I mean, with the closure of a lot of economic activities, the lockdowns, and so on, we saw that global production chains were actually very, very susceptible to threats. That within the inherent, within the interconnectedness of the global system that we often talk about, that there is actually a particular quality which does make it particularly vulnerable, and that is the quality of there being embedded within that global system a kind of system of relations of inequality within societies and between societies or between countries. I think that the problems that are inherent in such a global system became apparent or more starkly observable because of the COVID-19 pandemic and its effects. One of the things that that the pandemic showed is that most of the huge problems that the world faces now cannot be dealt with individually by any single country, by any single society, no matter how powerful. So, you know, besides the pandemic, a very important, a very vital problem that the world is facing together now is that of global warming. And we know that it is not possible to make a global effort to tackle, to overcome the problems of global warming. Otherwise, all nations, all societies in future generations, and not too far actually ahead in the future, are going to face the consequences. The pandemic, I think, also showed that you cannot deal with something like COVID-19 simply within your own country, or at least the results of trying to isolate yourself from the rest of the world and not to be involved in global efforts in overcoming the pandemic will actually result in responses which are not particularly effective. So, for example, we have you know, such global inequalities between societies, between countries, so that, for example, we have large surpluses of stock of vaccines in very rich countries, such as in Australia. And in many developing countries, in many poor countries, there is not enough of a stock of such vaccines. Now, in where I live currently, in Australia, I'm told that a particular percentage of those vaccines need to be destroyed because their use-by date has been met. Whereas in other countries in the world, you know, they don't have enough, and so this is such a waste. And the result is that you know, you have countries in the world, the poorest countries in the world, that don't have access to these vaccines. The virus continues to go around there. They mutate, and then they go back to travel around the world, including to the more wealthy countries. And then the vaccines that the wealthy countries are using, we find, are not particularly effective in dealing with mutated strains of the virus. Now, of course, there are complex reasons why this takes place, but one of the reasons is really because there's large parts of the world that are vaccine-free, and where the virus can still go around, mutate, and then travel around the world, and the vaccines that have been produced are not able to deal with them. And therefore, even though you try to deal with the pandemic in your own country by providing stocks of vaccine, by promoting vaccination, etc., yet you still have a global crisis. Okay. So I'm going now to state responses to the pandemic. Now, the responses to the pandemic among countries and even within countries have been very, very diverse. So to take one, case in one end of the spectrum, we know that China is still pursuing a zero COVID policy. And that involves lockdowns of large cities, large urban populations with 20, 30 million people, etc. Whilst other countries have now opened up or have combined policies of opening up with various kinds of policies of monitoring or mitigating the possibility of transmission. Melbourne, where I live, it was or had the reputation or has the reputation as being the most locked down city in the world. In fact, I was in Melbourne throughout that period, and I can attest to the fact that yes, we had a very hard lockdown in Melbourne, which seemed to be successful in many respects, but also elicited lots of protests amongst people, anti-vaxxers, people who didn't believe that COVID existed, and people who just needed to be more mobile in order to work, to be with family, etc. But in other cities in Australia, not all cities in Australia, not all states in Australia were as tough in their responses as the government of Victoria, in which Melbourne resides. So within Australia, you had differences. In Indonesia, we know that initially the central government was unfortunately quite slow in responding to the pandemic. There were high-level state officials who actually were quite dismissive of it, to the detriment, I think, of the wider population. And even when the central government did enact policies, its capacity to implement them were somewhat limited. And the effect of that was that local governments often implemented their own policies, and the nature of these policies were often quite different. So that if you crossed the boundary of one small local government and you went to another one, you'd find yourself facing different regimes of regulation, which makes things very, very confusing for people and very inconvenient. But I would like to point out that notwithstanding these various kinds of responses, that everywhere in the world, almost without exception, really, going back to the theme of inequality here, it has been the poor and those who are precariously positioned in society by virtue of the kind of employment that they have, and also women who have who have suffered the brunt or the worst of the effects of the pandemic. We see that access to health services in many countries, including developed countries like the United States, some countries even in Europe, also to some extent. You saw a bit of that in Australia, which prides itself in its national health system, which is supposed to be accessible to all. That there is inequitable, unequal access to the health services that is required to actually maintain one's safety during the pandemic. So that it was often poor people who had to go to work because they had no choice to work from home, who also did not have access to PCR tests, RAT tests, and sometimes to vaccines. Women around the world actually had their careers jeopardized because of sort of ingrained gender roles where women take care of the household. So when women work from home, they tend to also have to take up more of the household chores, and it's the health and well-being psychologically and physically of women that have also been relatively more jeopardized. So especially if we're talking about poor women, women amongst the poor, who don't have maids and so on, like middle-class people do in many societies in Asia, for example, including Indonesia. Now, state capacity has been shown to be uneven. So in China, in Singapore, we have seen a very high capacity to regulate public behavior, to comply with public ordinances, for better or for worse, right? But the capacity to actually, sort of drive the public to comply with the policies that the governments have put together and implemented have generally been high. In Western democratic countries, we've seen mixed results. I think in Australia, we've seen a greater capacity that most people, except for the 10% of people in Australia, for example, who are anti-vaxxers or who didn't believe that COVID actually existed, and then went to the streets to protest, generally did comply with lockdown rules, comply with rules about mobility, about working from home, about taking tests, reporting test results, and so on. But in a place like the United States, I would say that the capacity of the state was shown to be a bit lower, and that had to do not necessarily just with the nature of the institutions there, but probably because at the very highest level of governance in the White House, there was a high level of incompetence at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Interestingly, you can say that, if autocratic countries, authoritarian countries, they can force their publics to comply with anything, and therefore, you should be able to safeguard public health in countries like that. Whereas in democratic countries, people might protest, etc. But that's not been the case all around, because in many autocratic countries, they lack legitimacy. The governments and the people didn't trust the state. They didn't trust state policy. They didn't trust state policy to be implemented on their behalf. They started, believing in cockamamie kind of conspiracy theories and so on. So that in many of these autocratic governments, they were not able to actually regulate public behavior, even though they could regularly frighten their populations through coercive measures, so that, for example, they don't protest the government in relation to various political scandals or economic policies and so on. But basically, even though they had the capacity for coercion and to scare their populations didn't trust them and therefore didn't comply. Okay, going ahead to society. Because the capacity of states have been uneven, and because of basically the different sort of nature of civil society in these different countries that we're talking about, we've seen different levels of grassroots activity to deal with the pandemic. And usually, even though these grassroots activities are really important, especially when states have been ineffective, we also see that the factor of social inequalities comes to the fore. So, for example, in middle class or more wealthy neighborhoods and localities, people had a better ability to take care of themselves, simply because, well, we can work from home. We don't have jobs where we have to, sort of sell things in the street corner, where we have to carry things in the ports, where we have to, drive buses and so on, and therefore, and also, of course, they had money to call in for food, to have groceries brought in, and so on, and therefore. If they work together, a particular neighborhood or locality to help each other, to organize and so on, you would see that they were a better position than poorer neighborhoods. But this has, broader implications as well, because in the poorer neighborhoods where you couldn't do that, the people went out to work and so on, and they often didn't have money for PCR tests, for RAT, and so on, and maybe also, they couldn't get vaccinated, and therefore the virus continues to circulate, and even the rich people and the middle class people who are in their sort of little middle class or rich gated neighborhoods or fortresses and so on have to live in a continual state of COVID emergency, right? It's interesting that in some places, the capacity of self-mobilization of society has been quite prominent. Vietnam is actually a prominent case, although a lot of that mobilization has intersected with state, sort of mechanisms and institutions that had pre-existed, having to do with the sort of party-based and sort of military-oriented ways in which grassroots organizations, including in the health area, are organized. But, it's been actually quite amazing, especially in 2020, 2021. We saw that the ability of grassroots organizations in Vietnam to maintain low levels of COVID transmission to be quite significant. In Indonesia, we also had, sort of neighborhood groups, developing, and often it is said to demonstrate social resilience. Well, that's true in a way, but that social resilience, in many ways, has been forced to them because of the ineffectiveness of the implementation of policies and the vagueness, ambivalence of state policy. So while you did see, sort of neighborhood groups and so on coming together and so forth, it was a matter of necessity because of the ineffectiveness of the state. So we see that basically the pandemic shows that social inequalities are inimical to dealing with and recovering from global health crises, right? Because poor people will get hit more by it, but then they'll, it'll spread around, and everybody will have to live in emergency situation. Same as, poor countries not having access to PCR or vaccines and so on, then sort of transferring back because of human mobility and so on back to the rich countries, even though they're stocking themselves overflowing with vaccines. But I say this, and yet we are seeing that the world is becoming increasingly unequal. Right. So today, something like, according to the World Bank, the IMF, and various international organizations, something like 10% of the world's population controls 76% of the wealth. Right. And inequalities within all of the major economies of the world have increased over the last 20 or 30 years. Whether it's the big countries like, the traditionally big countries like America, emerging ones like China, India, or Indonesia. In Indonesia now, according to the World Bank, about 5 years ago, 1% of the population controls 49 to 50% of the wealth. So whilst, inequality is something that makes it really difficult to sort of come together to deal with a problem, a crisis that we are facing together, in reality, the world and societies in the world are becoming more and more unequal. And this was divulged by COVID. Now, just one last slide where I talk about academia, the nation, and the world. So, of course, we hope that because of this crisis, that there will be more investment by states and hopefully the private sector in some cases into medical research, public health systems, and so on, hopefully, therefore, producing evidence that academia, is best situated to come up with to affect policymaking in a positive direction. I mean, we certainly hope that this will take place. But then, this is, something that I often hear from social scientists. What about us? Well, I think, first of all, it is incorrect to think that the social sciences don't have a role. In fact, if anything, the COVID-19 pandemic shows that that there is actually a huge opportunity, in fact, a huge need for social science-oriented sections of academia to stake a claim for relevance. Okay, now, so for example, engineers, medical doctors, and so on, they will not be talking about the sorts of things I talked about earlier: state-society relations, social inequalities, how the dynamics between all of these affect state and society responses and the ability and inability to deal with a global pandemic, whether they manifest, sort of globally or nationally or locally. So it is really, I think, up to social science academics to stake a claim in such a way to show that these, social dimensions of the problem are almost as important, if not as important, as the medical and the hard science parts of the problem. So that really what we are doing is, well, we in the process build a discussion towards, well, what kind of society really, and what kind of nation, and what kind of world really would in future be able to deal more effectively with crises that are global in nature, affects everybody, and cannot be dealt with in a selfish manner. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say. Hello? Hello? Yeah, is the...
Dia nanya. Udah. Can you type something, please?
Hello?
Yes, thank you, Professor.
Pak Moderator?
Can you hear my voice, Professor? Can you hear my voice, Professor? No. Can you hear my voice, Professor? Can you hear my voice, Professor? Yeah. Okay. So thank you for your speech. I think that we know that now the world is unequal, so and growing increasingly unequal. So yeah, this global health crisis now creating such a new situations, and I think we need to respond as a social academia. Need to respond to that on the social dimensions of it. So I think now we are facing a new situation, and that's why we are here as part of the responsibility or the roles of the social scientists in the post-pandemic. So I think the speech from Professor Hadi is very important for us as a guidance to know the situation, the current situations in the world. So in terms of social scientists, we need to respond to it. So I think that's all from me as the moderator. We are very sorry for the inconvenience because of the technical problem before. So thank you very much, Professor Hadis, for the keynote speech.
My pleasure, and I wish you a fruitful conference for the rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh, that's really awkward.
Check, check. Thank you for Mr. Hadis for the excellent explanations. Then we will have ceremony appreciations by giving certificate virtually for Mr. Hadis. Please be ready and be seated to do the documentation sessions. And please for the operator to take a picture and be ready to take a picture of Mr. Hadis along with the certificate.
All right, maybe we will proceed to the next agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, continuing our next agenda, there will be plenary sessions which will be delivered by several speakers in two formats, online and offline. And we have four great speakers today. First, Professor Dr. Tuamo Rauta Kivi, professor from Royal Phnom Penh University, Cambodia. And second, we have Professor Khadijah MD Khalid, PhD, from University of Malaya, Malaysia. And third, we have Associate Professor Pan Yu from Jinan University, China. And last but not least, we have Associate Professor Dr. Dwianto Indiahono from Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, Indonesia. The plenary sessions also will be moderated by Mr. Koira Subandi. So without further ado, Mr. Kabandi, the floor is yours. Thank you.
There you go. All right. Now we move to the next sessions, which is the plenary session speakers. Before we go on, I would like to invite Professor Khadijah to come forward. You prefer there? Okay. To the presentation first. Okay. Yeah. Okay then. Okay. Before we move, we hear the speech from each speakers in the plenary sessions. I would like to introduce the speakers for these plenary sessions. The first one is Professor Tomo Rotakivi. His education was his PhD at the Ramkhamhaeng University, Bangkok, Thailand, and he is the royal as the visiting full professor of Asian Studies and Organizational Development and Sustainability in the Royal University of Phnom Penh, Department of International Studies, Cambodia. Now he also the honorary consul of the Republic of Finland in Southeast Thailand at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Finland. And he is also the visiting scholar here in Jenderal Soedirman University in Faculty of Social and Political Science, Department of Public Administrations. He was also a university lecturer before in Burapa University at the Graduate School of Public Administration, Thailand. His latest publication of the journal is the Critical Evaluations of Individualism, Collectivism, and Collective Actions, Non-Western Approach. It is still under the peer review process. And yeah, I think that's it from the Professor Tomo. Yeah, that's the first one. The second is the Professor Khadijah Khalid. She is the professor at the Department of Administrative Studies and Politics at the Faculty of Economics and Administrations, University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Professor Khadijah received her double degree undergrad degrees with distinctions in political science and in economics, also with distinction, and a minor in international studies from Sonoma State University, California. She acquired her Master of Art degree in political science too, with an emphasis on international relations and comparative politics from the University of California at Santa Barbara. And the last one, she gained her doctorate degree in political studies, from the SUIS, the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. Throughout her career, she received many as a visiting scholars, such as from Fulbright. She was the visiting research fellow at the Duke University and also Johns Hopkins University. she was also the executive director of INPUMA from 2006 to 2018, where she established close relations with the government bodies in Malaysia, especially in the Johor and Sarawak, yeah, and as well as the international bodies such as JICA and the Asia Foundations. Through the INPUMAS programs, she also published books like the books for Asia, yeah. So and the other one is the corporations, yeah, because as a researchers, she creating a lot of research network, including with the researchers from Indonesia, Japan, and Thailand. So as she said that, she is a Southeast Asianist. So she have a lot have a big interest in the contemporary politics and societies, especially Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. Yeah, I think that's the the latest publication from her is the include in the Dragon's Tide Embrace, a neo-Gramscian perspective on Malaysia's foreign policy toward China, co-authored with MD Azman in the contemporary Chinese political economy and strategic relations. So in international journals in 2021. And The Power of Deed, the untold story of Abdul Qadir Shamsuddin in 2020. She was also the the award as with the Asian Outstanding Women's Award by the National Council of Women of Thailand. Yeah, in 2016, she was the sole recipient from Malaysia to receive the award, and this is a really incredible achievement, I think, in my opinion. The next one is Professor Pan Yue. He got the PhD at the School of the International Relations, Academy of Overseas Chinese Studies in Jinan Universities. He got his doctoral from School of International Relations, Sun Yat-sen University, and also his master degree. His expertise in the Indonesian politics and society, Indonesian language and literature, Indonesian overseas Chinese. So he also have a lot of publication, like 20 publication within 3 years. So I think that's really fascinating. Within 3 years with the 20 publications. Yeah, I think that's all. One of the his publication is what is it? The Pertukaran Humaniora and Kerjasama Tiongkok Indonesia dalam parade pasca pandemik, peluang, tantangan, dan prospek. Yeah, so that's the latest publication in 2021. The last but not least, from our universities, Professor Duyanto Indiahono. He is the associate professor in the Department of Public Administrations in our faculty. He gained his doctoral degree from Gajah Mada University in 2019, and he also the coordinators of the public administrations in FISIP Jenderal Soedirman Universities, and he just published his articles. The latest would be the just now, I think just a few days ago, entitled Bureaucratic Neutrality Index in Direct Regional Head Elections. So yeah, I think that's the CV from the speakers. And I would like to invite the first speakers for this plenary sessions. Professor Tomo Rotakivi through online through our Zoom meeting. Maybe the committee can show the Professor Tomo to deliver his speech on this plenary session. The time is yours, Professor Tomo. Can we start? For Professor Tomo?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, Professor Tomo.
Yes.
We can hear you clearly.
Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. And I hope that you enjoy in this conference. And I was very satisfied to listen last presentation. It was very professional and give a lot of details for us. And now it's my turn to talk something about current situation in the world and Asia. And my topic is from solid evolution to liquid evolution, challenges to public administration and institution. We have made that presentation together with the Professor Dr. Maurice Yolles, Center for the Creation of Coherent Change at Knowledge, Liverpool John Moore University. Okay. Context. Global COVID pandemic challenges public administration and public policy every stage around the world, not only in Indonesia or Finland or Germany, the whole world. And after COVID-19, new global catastrophe occurred, which affect for an energy supply around the world, and that is the war of Ukraine. And the global COVID, immediately after global COVID, the Ukraine war occur and create a lot of problems for around the world. War of Ukraine shows how interdependent current world it is. War between two relatively small economies make global energy crisis and global shortage of foodstuff. We must look for and understand that despite Russia is important country with energy and foodstuff, but it's similar sites like Italy in the world trade. And both global COVID pandemic and war of Ukraine increase global uncertainty in the world. And global uncertainty occurs also the states and challenge public administration in state level. And how this administration can deliver public goods. Societies change through external pressures from a changing environment or from the internal cultural dynamic that naturally occurs within social agencies. And we can look for that all social agencies are government organizations, government institution, private companies, and the families. The social agency can be in different sites and different function. As the result, these political, security, social, economic, and other changes are needed that present challenges to public administration and their capacity to create public goods. If they are unable to create public goods, they easily find in a governmental overload. And depending on that, public administration must to adapt and identify the development of new policies and function. And the preeminent public institutions that are part of the development process are the critical importance of the state and how willing and able they are changed in the internal process for external threat. Purpose of this presentation: a multidisciplinary theory of development is created, which is applied to political change. And we must understand that political change and political interest are the interest of the public institution and public administration. Development is taken as a process of institutional evolution that arises through the integration of agency theory, useful modeling, living system, and institutional theory, which have been successful in exploring evolutionary change. Applying the theory of the development to a political context, it can represent competitive political section where political frames of proposed policy and political orientation in political landscapes are in competition for administrative power in a political sphere of agents who are ultimately responsible for determining the allocation of power. And power in democratic countries like Indonesia come from its people. And Indonesia has done quite well in questions of COVID-19, despite the global frustration of COVID-19 pandemic. Indonesia was still able to increase the economic development almost a little bit more than 2%, comparing to Europe, where the economy fell down. In this case, Indonesia made it very well and was able to adapt in a changing situation. Development as evolution. Development is an evolutionary process in where something passes progressively and by degree from one state to another. Development can be defined in many ways, depending on what factors we want to focus on, like economic development, social development, or institutional development. And following example in Huntington, the institutional development is the first that they can lead and manage economic and social development. And then the power must be concentrated rather decentralized. Economic evaluation is perhaps the largest, or at least the most globally significant part of cultural evolution. Economic evolution is a cultural-based phenomenon, and it may occur in different ways in different locations, depending on prevailing culture. Culture is very important for creating economic outcomes. It's not the questions mainly about the questions of regime of the government or a system of the government. Economic growth occurs at the operational level of economic analysis. Economic evolution, however, refers to generic change and recoordination when the situation changes and the external changes occur in the society. This is also in a crucial, critical point for the government and public administration. Economic development in the West is defined or undermined by neoliberal ideology, where the central importance is trickle-down effect where prosperity and wealth trickling from the elites, the poorest. Mutta that trickle-down effect is popular and common in West. Even there is very criticized that, and we can see that very well in Europe, and example in Southeast Asia, example in Thailand. Now the pandemic and energy crisis make also the distribution of inequality more unequal, in rich and poor people, and the edge between poor and middle class and elites are increasing, and the rich take the riches and the poor take less. That trickle-down effect having a problem, because that is in an individualistic society, and they think that the prosperity fall down from the top. But we should to look for another side, like capillary effect, that the lower class people, like middle class or poor class people, create the economy and macroeconomics, because the rich people or elite cannot consume more than the poor people. But when the poor people buy something, there is the mass, and mass of economics create the economic development and economic growth. Social evolution. This is concerned with how social interaction between social agents arise, change, are maintained, how the public administration are able to change, control, manage, and maintain the social evolution. That is the crucial point for every government. Social evolution is the 19th century concept, then indeed intended to justify the process of Western colonization to facilitate advancement of less developed states that supported ideas of dependency and cultural inferiority. Social evolution have links with cultural evolution, and it's operate as an ideological trap invented to perpetuate asymmetrical relationship between dominant minorities and the dominant majorities in countries and among them. They have a two-state, international level, state and state, state between state, and inside the state, different social classes and how they interact together. Institutional evaluation, a structure of mechanism of social order that governs the behavior of a set of individuals within a given community. Encyclopedia Britannica defines it as a process that is intended to regulate societal behavior within organization or entire societies. Institutional evaluation is an important factor and crucial in the time of the crisis, because the crisis easily increase dissatisfaction of people for the government. And this is also the point where the populist system and populist organization enter the system and politics and the government institution. And they try to solve the problems, and they tell the problems without the resolution. And real plan. And the populism can be left-wing populism, right-wing populism. It can be religion populism or national populism, as we see in Russia, and nationalistic populism increasing in there, and create global uncertainty and also uncertainty in Ukraine and Russia. Institution, adaptation, and development, they are interconnected, as institution is a structure or mechanism of social order that governs behavior, while institutionalization is the process through which institution acquires values and stability. That is the one key core point for government institution and public administration, to create stability and deliver the values of the society. Political institutions offer an arrangement for maintaining order, resolving disputes, and selecting leaders with authority, and thus promoting political unity among two or more forces. And we can see that, an example in France now, the government has not made that so very well, and they have in a lot of crises and internal violences, and political institutions have not able to maintaining order or create equal distribution of public goods. And when the changes happen, every kind of government need to adapt in a changing system. And adaptation is an international process that is promoted by environmental change or external pressure and self-production. And now we have in a tool external pressure, COVID-19, and now we are post-COVID time. And the government organization, government policy, public policy, they need to do in a self-production and create and change their operation. Functional adaptability, not functional specificity, is the true measure of a developed organization. And we hope that Indonesia government are able to make the functional adaptation for the changing environment, because Indonesia is fragmented by geography and with huge population, with a lot of local cultures. Institution adaptation and development continue. Political development is the process of stimulating the political system and activating its institution to acquire increased capacity to satisfy old and new types of goals and demands. Now, the important point, how government and public administration are able to lead and demand economic development and make the social transformation steadily and create equal distribution of income, and how they can make public administration fair all places in Indonesia. And the crucial questions is executive control system, which needs the decentralization, and need to develop the executive control system before can make decentralization. Development is activity systems involves institutional evolution and institutionalization, and is defined through the capacity to adapt. Political development can be defined as increasing governmental efficiency in utilizing the human and material resources of the national goals. Additionally, there is another aspect to political development. Now, this is in a good time to Indonesian aspiration to change capital of Indonesia in new places and how Indonesian government and institution and public administration are able to deliver the construction work for the companies also in SMEs, not only in big corporation. Development is activity system involves institutional evolution and institutionalization, and it's defined through their capacity to adapt. Evolution is a process in which something passes by degree as a progressive change from one stage to another. When evolutionary progression is coherent, social improvement occurs, and development is related to growth and globalization. And globalization, as we talked before, challenge in the governments and public policies, because globalization is described as the Western values, rather so-called Eastern values, and that create the cultural problems and how the culture understand the globalization and the values. Distinction between development and growth, that is two different things. Development as an institutional evolutionary process directly influenced and is influenced by growth, resulting in institutions have coherent progress of change. Development is internal to a social system while being open to influences from its environment. Growth is external to a system occurring in the environment which the system operates, the government operates, and where the politics is implemented. That is operation level. It is currently stimulated by neoliberal globalization and trickle-down effects. Globalization is the process of interaction and integration that occurs between people, enterprises, and governments worldwide, and may have economic, political, technological, and cultural dimension. Development through globalization involves complex political process and strategies through that crosses national borders to deliver international functional process like on tasks, roles, and activities associated with neoliberal markets. Globalization currently operates through unfettered economic neoliberalism. Social neoliberalism continuously promotes social policy to facilitate economic neoliberalism. And there, in this section, the social culture are so different in East and West that when these two cultures and ideologies facing together, it may create uncertainty how we must do and why we must do in this way. Political neoliberalism consciously promotes policy to satisfy the wants of neoliberalism. Example, privatization. And this is very crucial question. Currently, we can see that in Europe. Almost everything important structure, infrastructure are privatized and say it's not the government responsibility. But what are the results? They are still government properties, like the ports and the most important export ports and harbors in Europe our own another government and another state like Singapore or China. Chinese government or Singaporean government own now the ports, important infrastructure in Europe, and that is very crucial and dangerous situation for Europe. But in East, they take an opportunity about that. What happened if there is a crisis between East and West? That is the good question. Neoliberal globalization involves market-related activities, tasks and roles referred to as neoliberal functionality that define horizontal borders. States have political functionality with vertical borders. States are enmeshed in international webs of governance and transnational social, political, and economic process, together creating complex functional borders. Vertical and horizontal boundary setting may be in conflict, resulting in interference between state and neoliberal functionality. Functional interference deconstructs and reconstructs effective borders, leading to the idea of borders without borders. That are the Western idea that they can share these governmental systems, economics, finance, and so on. Political development as an illustration of the impact.
You have one last more minute, Professor Tomo.
We'll use three variables to evaluate political development: cultural stability through the value system, cultural commitment through the normative system, and projection of emotional frameworks. The importance of culture to development. There is no political development without political culture. Development is culture driven, including system belief, values, norm, and knowledge. Belief are a state of mind in which something is thought to be case independent of any empirical evidence. Values assemble in the system and they represent important lasting belief of ideals. When the system is homogeneous, it orientates the human activity system it underpins. When it's heterogeneous, it loses the capacity for influence. And that is also important questions. In West, heterogeneous, and East, in homogeneous cultures, more. Norms assemble in the system represent shared belief about conduct and are composed as informal rules that guide cognition and behavior of those who are members of the culture. Knowledge is constructed through belief and values, and it's manifest as the shareable object of the audience and the primary bearers of truth and falsity. Culture may be stable or unstable. The stability of culture is determined by its value system. The value system can represent to have an yin-yang relationship between sensate, materialist, and ideonational relating to ideas, cognition, or psych values. The cultural value system may be stable when it has dominant sensate or ideonational value system, or one that takes an integrated balance between the two. The cultural value system is unstable when the relationship between sensate and ideonational values is mixed or ad hoc and hence not integrated. And that is also the transformation period when the instability, uncertainty, and value conflicts occur, and then the populist movement can enter the system. Value system, cultural stability, instability. We can say the trait is cultural, including sensate and ideonational, and there you can see what is the keywords and what is the nature and why it creates conflicts. And Sociocultural shift in the West, it's nothing new. Greek god, age sensate, archaic Greece, ideo-national classical Greece, integral idealistic, Hellenist Roman, sensate, transitional period mixed, and it was very unstable if we can look for the history. Middle age ideo-national, high middle age Renaissance, integral idealistic, age of science sensate, and now we are living in translational period again, and our system is unstable, as we can see. Oil crisis, food crisis, environment crisis, so many crises, and very unstable, and that create uncertainty. And this time again, populist system can promise the people solve the problems without real plan. Cultural condition can determine political.
Time's up, Professor. Sorry, Professor. Times is limited, so it's yeah.
Cultural impact of political development. Political party developments are very important, and political development establishment, and there is the political development. Okay, and there is the development of potential for political empowerment. And as you see, when the cultural stability and tight culture, possible location of illiberal democracy in its early century decline phase, example in Hungary, and populist government and the problem for the society and the neighboring countries. And this is the political agency. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now we go directly to the second speaker in this plenary sessions. That is Professor Hadijah. Please, time is yours. Okay. So you have like 20 minutes to for your speech, Professor. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and good morning to all. First and foremost, terlebih dahulu izinkan saya mengucapkan setinggi tahniah, heartiest congratulations to the Department Faculty of Social Science and Political Science, yeah, Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, yeah, for organizing this auspicious conference today and today, right? Terima kasih saya ucapkan kepada Profesor Wahyu, ya, rakan-rakan dari Universitas Jenderal Soedirman, ya. Mohon saya bicara bahasa Melayu dulu, ya. I hope our distinguished participants, paper presenters from other countries, you bear with me for a short while, because I'm always eager to speak in my own language whenever I meet the Indonesians. Thank you. Alright, so congratulations, tahniah, ya, atas conference ini, persidangan ini, dan saya minta maaf, saya mungkin tidak ingat nama Profesor Selamat, ya. Tengok saya ingin Dr. Hair, yes. Ya, minta maaf, ya, kalau saya tak sebutkan nama. Dr. Dwianto, ya, minta maaf rakan-rakan, ya. Saya sebenarnya berbesar berada di kampus Jenderal Soedirman University. Ya, saya maklumkan semalam dengan rakan-rakan pelajar-pelajar mahasiswa semalam that my association, ya, dengan Indonesia ini bermula semasa saya mahasiswa di Amerika Syarikat. Ya, I wrote a paper now I can speak in English. Yeah? I wrote a paper on Indonesia foreign policy, America and United States of America and Indonesia. Yeah, during the Cold War, looking at the role of Sukarno and also especially John F. Kennedy. Yeah, and later as a student of postgraduate at University of Santa Barbara, University of California, I wrote a paper on Sukarno as example of charismatic leader. So as a young student coming from the region, I thought that it was very important for me to know my neighbor, Indonesia. So years later, when I joined the as an academia at University of Malaya, I took my students to visit Udayana, Pajajaran, Air Langgar, Gajah Mada, UI. Ya, so dan hari ini saya ada 2 orang, ya, pembantu saya ialah mahasiswa postgraduate di law faculty dan Diana is a student in public administration. Yeah, because I feel that the young people, many of you are here today, we must know our neighbor, our destiny. Yeah, it's very important to work together. So what I plan to do in today's discussion, prior to this, you listen to Professor Henry, nama yang first speaker, yeah. He talked about the world that we live in today, full of uncertainties. We live in a turbulent world, a lot of changes, and it's very challenging for us all, regardless of our discipline, our profession, how we manage change or changes that are beyond our control. Many, yeah. So as a person who's trained in political science, international relations, we always talk about the importance of understanding domestic determinants or developments in our country and how the systemic changes at the global arena also impacting on our politics and our foreign policy. So foreign policy is a subset of international relations. Thus, unlike the second presenter, he was talking about public administration, right? So today, I'm talking more about international relations and foreign policy. And of course, later on, we will look specifically at maybe the role of diplomats, people who are actually working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Yeah. So again, you are fortunate, maybe I would say that, especially young students, that you had somebody from the public administration. Yeah. And then now I'm talking about international relations, foreign policy, especially we look at Indonesia, Malaysia as a case study, okay? And just to let you know, I recently published a paper on Malaysia-China relations, December last year, okay? And this particular book, I gave one to the library and then I give pass to the dean. There is a chapter on, chapter 3, there are a few pages on Malaysia-Indonesia, how we talk about the end of the confrontation and the roles of, specifically, the role of leaders, political leaders and administrators and even the army in the peace process between Malaysia and Indonesia. So very quickly, I have many slides, but I will try to go as briefly as possible. All right, and I have this problem of trying to make things shorter. Okay, now. So very quickly, an overview of Malaysia-Indonesia relations is very important. I would say that Indonesia can be regarded as the most important country to Malaysia in the region. Yeah, the 2 countries, as some of you are aware, especially the older ones, yeah, it's very intricate. Yeah, there's always panas, dingin, hot, cold, abang-adik, sibling relationship. Yeah, and always Indonesia was regarded more in the past as Malaysia's big brother. Yeah. Sometimes we talk about sibling rivalry. Ya, sibling itu adik abang kadang-kala itu banyak ada pergeseran. Ya, there's some issues in a family. Ya, so whatever it is, ya, the bilateral relations have always been challenging since the formation of Malaysia in 1963. Yeah, President Sukarno was very much against the formation of Malaysia early on because it was viewed as an extension of neo-colonialism. Yeah, whatever it is, I would like to state here that leadership as an important variable in understanding Malaysia's relations with neighboring Indonesia. And I will show to you later how this leadership as a variable determinant, yeah, kind of influence a lot of our relation, the nature of our relationship, yeah. All right, very quickly again, yeah, leadership in understanding our foreign relations. Quickly, I think I have seen articles written about Sukarno and Tunku Abdul Rahman. To recap, Tunku Abdul Rahman was trained as a lawyer in the UK. He was a prince from golongan bangsawan, menjadi Perdana Menteri yang pertama. So in a way, there was a personality clash between Tunku Abdul Rahman and Pak Sukarno. Yeah, Sukarno was seen as a very, what do you call this, charismatic, flamboyant, yeah, very unpredictable also. Yeah, I don't say that in a negative way. Yeah, I find that very interesting. Yeah, so when you look at personalities, very important to understand sometimes personalities do clash. All right, so when Indonesia announced the Ganyang Malaysia or Crash Malaysia, I was told, I was born already, as you know, I was a baby, but I heard that many older generation of Malaysians were very shocked. Yeah, because many of them actually admire President Sukarno. And I told maybe some of you yesterday that I remember as a young child, I would see President Sukarno's photographs, pictures, together with the Prime Minister. Yeah, so just to tell you, the keserumpunan itu very strong. Yeah, so it's interesting as a scholar, and many of you will probably embark on this kind of research in the future, try to understand what actually happened, yeah, in 1963 that prompted Indonesia to crush Malaysia or Ganyang Malaysia. Yeah. So anyway, to cut a long story short, the campaign against Malaysia was ended very quickly in a way, because there was also a change of government. Suharto came to power, and we had later on, after that, we had second Prime Minister of Malaysia. I have to mention Tun Razak because the father of Najib Tun Razak. Yeah, Tun Razak until now, even he passed away at the age of 53. Orang Bugis, orang Makassar, yeah, he's very much respected. Yeah, he has always been regarded until now as Bapa Pembangunan. Again, leadership. Yeah, is a variable international affairs or foreign policy. Tun Razak, interestingly enough, he introduced policies, foreign policies, which were less pro-West. Tunku Abdul Rahman, yeah, he had friends from Indonesia, and one of them personally before he passed away, Pak Des Alwi. Yeah, he told me how he looked at, he fondly remembered Tun Razak as a student. So this is very interesting. The context of Malaysia, Indonesia, and the region, always this bond, yeah, persaudaraan, people to people, individuals, is very important. We cannot underestimate that. Yeah, circle